Well, I mean, that can take us to the next one, which is inflation report shows great progress. Can it be trusted? And this is the thing, like I asked about, well, was there more people coming into the job market? That data may have not come out because they didn't get it. They may have not had time to do it, or like they lost. I mean, it was such a big task to to do this. Yeah, they're off kilter. So, but can it be trusted? Well, let's talk about the inflation report because headline November CPI came in at 2.7% compared to last November, which was well below the estimate of 3.1%. And core CPI, which excludes food and energy, showed an increase of just 2.6%. This was the lowest reading for core CPI since March 2021, when the increase was just 1.6%. And it also came well below the estimate of 3%. So we're getting some good numbers here, maybe.
Yeah, and there are again going to be good numbers in areas, but also there are some troubling spots or areas that did remain challenging, especially in food. And I was kind of surprised by this. I pulled out this one; it was one of the top increases. It's uncooked beef roast.
Wait. That is such a small area. Uncooked beef roast.
Uncooked beef roast, yes.
Wow.
And it's kind of a microcosm for beef as a whole, but I mean, uncooked beef roast, they climbed 21.2% year over year. Beef as a whole has been really challenged, and I'll get into that in a second, but coffee also was a large increase of 18.8% year over year. But talking about beef prices, they've really struggled. I did not know this. I know it was a challenging area, but cattle supply actually touched its lowest point in 2025 since the early 1950s.
Wow.
And you also have to compare to that, we are a larger population now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I bet you even as a percentage, that cattle supply really has to be at troubling levels. And if you look at coffee, I mean, coffee prices have been hit extremely hard by, extreme weather in major coffee producing countries, as well as the tariffs that were levied on Brazil. I generally drink just coffee in the office here, so I don't really go out and get a cup of coffee, but I'd have to assume those prices have gone up for your, maybe a $5 latte is now a $7 latte.
Should we start charging for a coffee in the office here?
I don't know. What do you think, Michelle? Yeah.
I don't think the employees do that. But, I was looking at beef. Does that include hamburger, you think? Is it all
beef prices.
beef?
Yeah,
Beef
because
prices?
the cattle is just so limited right now that I think the margins that they have to extract are so tight that they have to increase prices.
And I do remember reading, I'm going to say months ago, that they are having trouble, I believe, in the Midwest because of lack of water, that they can't grow the grain for the cows to eat, and that is hurting the supply of cows. Another thing could be the demand may be lower because I know there was also a trend where people were stop eating meat and eating more chicken and fish. Oh, and how did that Beyond Meat do? Did that do pretty good? That didn't replace anything. It doesn't help at all. So, let's see where we are there. So shelter inflation was another positive in the report, as the annual increase was just 3%, and it's believed there is more relief coming for the largest weight in the CPI. And we've talked about that for a long time as well, which is, well, the CPI generally, the shelter index costs, well, about 1/3 of the headline number. If the inflation for shelter slows further, it would be very beneficial for the inflation rate as we progress through 2026. And we've talked about this as well. We saw this happening, and it had to happen because of it's based on the rent equivalent, I believe is the correct terminology they use.
That's part of it.
Part of
yeah,
it.
they do use actual rents, and then for homeowners, they use the owner's equivalent rent, which is just survey data.
Right. And we talk about constantly. I talk to people across the country as well. They go, yeah, there's a lot of apartments here going up as well. So this always happens. I've been doing this for over 40 years. It always happens. There's a big need for something. You get all these builders and everything. They come in, but they got to get the permits and everything else. And then by the time it hits the market, oh, we got too much of it now.
Yeah, and I'm still shocked, honestly. It's taken this long for the data to come through on CPI. But what I think that does do is it leaves a longer run rate for shelter being less problematic in the CPI report. Because now we've kind of seen, well, it took a while for rising prices to hit shelter. Now it's taken a while for the leveling off in prices essentially to be a positive in the CPI. So again, if we have now a inflection and prices go back up in real estate, well, now we should have a longer run rate for it to flow through to CPI again, which begs the question, how impactful is CPI? And, Stephen Mirren, who's the most recent appointee to the Fed, I was actually listening to him talk on CNBC, and he was saying, look, I keep voting for these big rate cuts because I believe that shelter inflation is going to be so small next year that that is going to be a huge benefit to CPI, and I think we are going to be seeing close to the 2% target.
So he's kind of seeing deep in the numbers, saying yes, we can cut rates because while you see unemployment, you see inflation around, we'll say 2.6 to 3, nowhere near the 2%. He's saying this shelter index, shelter inflation, will be coming down. So he's foreseeing a year from now, and that's very insightful.
Yeah, it was interesting because I've been really skeptical of the large decreases that he's been advocating for. But I mean, what he was saying did make some sense, and I still think I disagree with the fact that he wants rates even like substantially lower. I think that could cause issues. But I think you get the Fed funds rate around that 3% level. I think he wants it around 2 or something like. I think Trump wants it under 1, which I think that would be inflationary and problematic. But I think if you got it around that 2.5%, 3% level, I couldn't see the need for more rate cuts beyond that. I think that's where I'm having a hard time conceptualizing that. But the idea of inflation coming down, that does make sense.
Yeah, and actually Washington, as we know, they want the lowest, they want a boom economy, which we should have starting because of all this foreign money coming in to build and stuff. That should start next year. That should help. But I feel you're right on the 3% because you want to have something left in the gun, some bullets left in the gun. Because what if things don't go well? Yeah. And now you're at 1%, you got nothing left to do.
Got nothing left to do. Negative rates, I don't think negative rates would be a good solution. Or, also it could stoke further inflation, which would be a problem. And I think you do have to have a hurdle rate when you borrow money. You can't have free money forever. Right. That just leads to huge asset price inflation. And I think it could cause bubbles down the road even further than where we're at. And the last thing I was going to say about the CPI, I kind of mentioned this, but again, the exact data was there was no CPI for October because, well, they couldn't collect the survey since the government was shut down. And the BLS was only able to collect about for half the month of November. The shutdown did not end until November 12th. And I was reading some other things from economists, and they were saying, think about that as well. So what happened in the back part of November? You had Black Friday, you had Cyber Monday, all the Thanksgiving deals. So you put a larger weight on a lot of the goods that were sold during discounted times. So it could have actually even made that CPI look even stronger. So, I mean, there are a lot of question marks around it. I don't just want to throw out that data, but I think that December report, which will be due sometime in January, I think there'll be a lot of weight on that since that'll be the first full month of data. I think that we'll get in surveys for employment and also inflation.
Right.